Good evening and welcome to tonight's regular council meeting. Today's date's January 7th, 2025 at 7 p.m. in Marion City Hall. And we'll call this meeting to order and begin with the prayer with Reverend Tanya Smith from Allen Temple AME. Thank you so much for coming tonight, and you're welcome to lead us in prayer.
Let us pray.
If you could turn your microphone on.
Okay, because this ain't my thing, so my mic is in the pulpit, but that's all right. Let us pray. Most holy and everlasting God, we come before you in the name of Jesus to thank you and praise you for this day. We ask you, oh God, to look upon this city council, each member, God, and the city, protect it, continue to protect them and protect this city, our police and fire. We pray right now, God, that sound decisions be made for our city through this council, God, and we pray for peace, love, and unity throughout this city and among this council, God, in Jesus' mighty name. Let us all say amen.
Thank you so much. And we have the Pledge of Allegiance led today by our wonderful city clerk, Deborah Goodman.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much, Reverend Tanya. Thank you so much for coming tonight. You're welcome to stay, but you don't have to. So, oh, great. Thank you. All right. And Clerk Goodman, you're welcome to stay as well if you'd like. So, yeah. Okay, we'll go ahead and move into roll call. Madam Clerk.
Kane.
Aye.
Marshall.
Here.
Fordyce.
Here.
Brunner.
Here.
Klein.
Here.
Devine.
Here.
Wetton.
Here.
Cowgill.
Here.
McKinley.
Here. And before we go into tonight's community spotlight, for those that weren't at the 6 p.m. meeting, we did have the election of the council president and vice president, and just want to thank the entire council for we'll say entrusting me to continue another year in this role, and it's humbling to have the support to continue on another year, and I'm looking forward to helping the city and our residents. And then also, the council did elect a new vice president, so congratulations to Councilman Gary Fordyce Sr. He is our new council vice president. So congratulations, Councilman Fordyce. And we're going to go ahead and move in tonight's community spotlight, and I'll get my graphic pulled up here. All right. There we go. And tonight's community spotlight is Mr. Kyle Whiteman. And Kyle, if you want to come on up to the front here. You can come all the way up, stand right here. You get to stand almost front and center. Yeah. You just want to stand right here, and we're going to recognize you. So lots of respect for this guy right here. And if anyone doesn't know why he's standing here, I hope after we're done, there's just more recognition for what you did. So, Kyle Whiteman is a resident here in Marion, and at 11:15 p.m. on September 6, 2024, Kyle Whiteman heroically went into his neighbor's burning home in the 3100 block of South Race Street after hearing screaming. He selflessly ran in to save his neighbor and animals, and even moved his car to put the headlights onto the house so they could see better. And then a lot ensued in there. They're breathing in a lot of smoke and trying to save the neighbor, and ultimately, help save his neighbor and quite a few of the pets that were inside the house. And Kyle didn't even blink. And he is the epitome of just, we'll say, a hero, right? You didn't get paid to do that day. You didn't go to work to do that. You were just sitting at home watching television and saw somebody in need and went in blind and sacrificed your own life. And Kyle almost lost his life, in fact, doing that. So, because shortly after He was getting checked out by the medics for just smoke inhalation, and realized something was going on. So during all of that process, which, get your adrenaline going, get your heartbeat going, a lot started going on with Kyle's health right there on the scene. And he ended up being a lifeline to the hospital, where he received 2 stents. And there's, I think, a couple other things that you could share too. I mean, you got 2 stents, and he was in the hospital for a while there, and it wasn't good. 2 days.
They wanted me longer, but
They wanted him longer, but he needed to get out in case another neighbor had a fire, right? To save them. So.
I would do it again. But to be called a hero, I mean, not a hero. Just seen something that needed to be done, and just did it. Stupid is what. Stupid. My wife says that I get in trouble a lot of times for not thinking, and well, that'd probably been one of them.
Well, I appreciate your humility and being humble about it, but to that, on that day, to either your neighbor and those animals, you really were the hero to them. So I've been wanting to get you in here for a couple council meetings. We wanted to do it last meeting, but he had some stuff come up. But I've known about this for quite some time. I do know Kyle through another avenue outside of the council, and was aware of it pretty quickly after it happened, and just had been on my mind a lot and wanted to make sure you're okay. I did call him at some point, checked in on him. But I do understand too, and I wanted to use this platform because, Kyle wasn't able to work for quite a while. And, if you don't work for a while, that can put a little bit of economic strain. And so, I think you're back to work now, right? Are you back to full-time or working your way into it?
Yeah, working my way into it. There's still a few things that, like, I can't do or shouldn't do. The doctor says that I shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
My wife says that I shouldn't do it. So,
We want you to
don't do it.
take it a little bit easy, but, it creates an economic strain. And so actually a GoFundMe was set up to help. And so I really encourage anyone watching online, anyone in here, to just make a contribution to kind of help them get back on their feet. I can only imagine being in your shoes and the position you're in of, you try to do something right and then you can't work, or you can't work as much. And, Kyle's got a wonderful family here, kids to support and a wife. And so I just encourage everybody to support. There's a QR code on the screen and a link as well. So I encourage everyone, if you don't have a chance to catch the QR code or whatever, just get a hold of me and I can send you the link. But the goal that was set up was to raise $5,000. Currently, they've raised $250. So I really want everyone to help us get to that goal, even if it's just $10. So just wanted to use that platform to try and help you out as well, because Marion is a wonderful city, and we want to recognize wonderful people like you in our community. So I just want to give you a hand. Everybody give Kyle a hand. Good deeds don't go unnoticed. And so, go ahead.
I just wanted to say, as I'm a retired firefighter too, and my brothers back here, they'll tell you too, that you hear that word hero a lot, and we don't feel it. But for you to go in, not being a firefighter with no protective gear, you may not think you're a hero, but I'm telling you, I know what amount of courage that took to do that, and I just want to shake your hand, bro, seriously.
Also want to invite his family on up here. All of the family can come on up, and truthfully, any of the other firefighters that show up. So some of the firefighters in the back showed up to support you as well. So any and all of you, we encourage you, because we'd like to get a photo.
While they're coming up, the word stupid got thrown around when I bet your neighbors and the rest of us don't associate the word stupid with that. So gratitude and thank you would be a couple other words I'd use. Thank you. Well done.
Yeah, I hope if I'm in that situation, somebody else decides to be stupid and come save me. So If you guys want to just kind of stand out in the front here, and then we'll get a photo. The rest of the council is, of course, always invited and squeezing in.
All right, ready? 1, 2, 3.
You guys are welcome to stay, but I understand you might have some bedtimes before tomorrow. Maybe they'll see your exception tonight. Okay, we're going to go ahead and move into the consent agenda. And for the approval of minutes, consideration of pre-approved claims, and consideration of claims. And then I'm going to defer to Councilman Marshall. He caught something on the minutes. Are we good with it? Do we need to make a, we good? Okay, well, perfect. Never mind. It was taken care of. Thank you so much. Well, then I would take a motion for the consent agenda.
I make a motion.
Yeah, you can make a motion to approve it. You have to make the motion to approve.
To approve, yes, I'm sorry.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Marshall to approve the consent agenda, seconded by Vice President Fordyce. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, roll call.
Kane,
Aye.
Marshall,
Aye.
Fordyce,
Aye.
Brunner,
Aye.
Klein. Devine,
Yes.
Witten,
Yes.
Cowgill,
Aye.
McKinley.
Yes. And moving into committee reports. Do we have any committee reports? Councilwoman Devine.
Okay, so we started off the new year with the Board of Works meeting this week. They welcomed a new member, Virginia Drake, to take the place of Megan Gilmore, who had resigned at the end of the year. And then they also had their election of officers, keeping Alex Husky as chair and voting Vicky, and I've lost her last name all of a sudden, as the vice chair. Mr. Fordyce, or Mr. Fosnight gave a update on some of the unsafe structures that they'd been watching. There's a particular owner who owns several properties, and he is continuing to move forward, get permits, work, have open communication, and they're very pleased with the way that that's going, that they're able to help save some of the houses and make them safe again for habitation. The city attorney also spoke with the board about approving a request for proposals and qualifications on an innovative turnkey energy services solution. So they are working on getting that information and then be able to bid out some of the repairs to the heating and cooling of specifically this building and possibly other buildings. And so I'll be interested in seeing that as they move forward and how those proposals come in and talking to those individual groups and seeing what they're doing. I believe, and I had talked to them at the meeting, isn't that similar to something that had been done 10 years or so ago, 12 years ago? Was that what we paid off last year? Then initial, am I correct on that? Okay. So that's why I said I'm kind of interested to see how that goes this time and what's being proposed and what the potential savings and repairs are going to be. As we all know, there's obviously some major issues with the system, especially here at City Hall. One of the other things they looked at, or that the board approved, were the memorandums of understanding with the county regarding some ARPA funds that the county has given over to the city specifically earmarked to help with the animal control, and then some downtown improvements. Yes, so two parts of it for the animal control department, and then some earmarked for downtown improvements as well, that the county has given that to the city. And that was everything they did.
All right, thank you so much, Councilwoman Devine. Any other committee reports or liaison reports?
Yeah, I do, Mr. President.
Go ahead.
The Board of Aviation Commissioners met January 2nd, and their big news is Ray Dosh retired, who's a retired corporate pilot. I know he flew a long time for Bell Fiber. He is a new member and is also now the new president of the Aviation Board. Mark Johnson is the new vice president, and the high school classroom is getting 2 drone simulators soon. But I hope they give us a demonstration of that. That sounds kind of cool. And that's what I have. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilman Klein. Any other committee reports or liaison reports? Okay, and we're going to go ahead and move into unfinished business. Actually, no, there is no unfinished business. We're going to move into new business and General Ordinance 01-2025, petition to vacate a public right-of-way in the 2000 block of South Clark Street.
An ordinance to vacate a portion of the 2000 block of South Clark Street from 2002 South Clark Street to 2009 South Clark Street, an adjacent alley to the east in the city of Marion, Indiana. The Marion Municipal Utilities currently owns all the real estate bordering on both the east and west sides of Clark Street, on the east and west sides of the portion of Clark Street to be vacated, as well as the subject alley to be vacated. The purpose of the proposed vacation is to allow the installation of a combined sewer overflow storage tank as part of the utilities CSO long-term control plan that was approved by IDEM. Speaking, Attorney Mike Connor.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's good to be here. I am the attorney for the Marion Municipal Utilities, and we filed this petition to vacate a portion of South Clark Street. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know, but basically, the way this was described by the clerk is correct. This is a long-term control plan process. It's been imposed on the city of Marion by IDEM, very expensive, and something we're working on over the years. And part of what we've done is we've been to the Board of Works and gotten ownership of properties in the area. We basically own almost everything around this portion of Clark Street. And the reason we would like to vacate Clark Street is so that an above-ground storage tank for overflows can be placed on the property. I understand it's going to be landscaped and trees and green space put around it, so it's not a big eyesore. And yeah, I think you can tell from the map, it's a kind of a, not exactly a dead end, but close to it, part of Clark Street. We've suggested giving notice to some neighbors in the area, even though that's probably overkill, just to be fair to them, since it's very close to them. But under the statute, they're not technically abutting the part of the street. And this alley that, to the east that we're asking also to be vacated. So it's also been run by the traffic committee. And if there are any questions, I've got a couple of folks here from the Marion Utilities that can answer specifics. I do the legal, but I can't really talk too much about the technical part of the storage tank that they're going to place on the property and so forth. So we would just ask that the council pass this on first reading and move it on so we can get notice published and notice to the nearby landowners and proceed with this project. I would add, I understand that if we can't vacate this, we could still put in some kind of a storage tank, but it would be millions of dollars more expensive. That's my understanding. I think Pat Pinkerton, who's here, could explain more if you have any questions about that. So is there any questions that we can answer for the council?
Any questions? I have one, or maybe two. Is there ever a possibility, I know everything's possible, but that this would ever need to be expanded or increased in size, or do you think this is all we're going to need to do for the foreseeable future?
Yeah, so our understanding from the engineering firms that we've been working with is that this would be sufficient to meet the guidelines that have been set forth by IDEM according to our long-term control plan.
And then if we're going to vacate part of a street, I mean, there are some houses that will, at least one, lot 10, are they still going to be able to access their front and rear of their home easily, or is there going to be like a roundabout or anything put in, or not a roundabout, cul-de-sac, or is it just going to dead end and then they'll still be able to get in and out easily?
Yeah, we will need access too, and we'll need a place to turn around. And so that'll be the homeowner, on the homeowner's side of things, there will be a space for a large vehicle to turn around, trash trucks and utility vehicles as well. So that shouldn't be a problem to impede access to the homeowner's property.
And then you said it did pass through the Traffic Commission favorably?
Yes.
Okay. That's all the questions I have. Vice President Fordyce, I got to get used to it.
I just asked, do we have the blessings from the gas company and electric company on relocating any other utilities in that area that are going to have to be relocated since you're putting in a storage tank? We normally try to get a letter of acceptance from both the other utilities that there's nothing impeding.
I believe that is part of the process, that gets issued to them to give entities like that the chance to speak up. We've not received anything to that effect.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
And also, I have some contacts through both, and I'll be following up with the veteran and AP contacts as well as this moves along to make sure they're good as well.
Utilities like to play nice together.
Would hope so, yes. All right, any other council members? Okay, if no other questions, I would entertain a motion.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that we pass General Ordinance 1, 2025 on the second reading.
I have a motion to pass ordinance 1, 2025 by Councilman Cowgill, seconded by Councilman Klein. Any other discussion? Madam Clerk, roll call.
Kane.
Aye.
Marshall.
Aye.
Fordyce.
Aye.
Brunner.
Aye.
Klein. Yes. Devine.
Yes.
Witten.
Yes.
Cowgill.
Aye.
McKinley.
Yes, General Ordinance 1-2025 is passed, and we'll move on to second reading, public hearing at the next regular council meeting. Thank you so much for coming tonight.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your service to the community.
Appreciate that. And moving into General Ordinance 2-2025, petition to vacate a public right-of-way.
An ordinance to vacate a portion of First Street from Branson to Adams Street, and the east-west alley from Branson to Adams Street, and the north-south alley from 2nd to 1st Street. The City of Marion is requesting the vacation of First Street from Adams and Branson, and the alleys running east and west between Adams and Branson, and the north and south between 2nd and 1st Street, for the purpose of providing a location for the new River Rock project. Says speaking Mayor Ronald Morrell Jr., but
I'm not as good
I
looking.
don't see him.
Good evening, council.
Welcome.
I was the last minute choice, I guess, so. You had this come before you slightly. It should have been the petitioner should have come first before the general ordinance. So really the general ordinance part was moot because it wasn't brought to you correctly. So this is the attempt to make sure that we get it right. So any questions, I'll be glad to entertain any of them.
Any council members? If no questions, I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we pass General Ordinance Number 2-2025 to second reading and public hearing.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Kane, second by Councilman Brunner. Any other discussion? Madam Clerk, roll call.
Kane,
Aye.
Marshall,
Aye.
Fordice,
Aye.
Brunner,
Aye.
Klein, Devine,
Yes.
Witten,
Yes.
Cowgill,
Aye.
McKinley.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Ordinance, thank you so much. You know, you might have been a last second, but you were the first choice. There you go. So yes, ordinance 2-2025 is passed. We'll move to second reading, public hearing at the next council meeting. And moving into encumbrances.
A review of the encumbrances from the 2024 budget carrying over into 2025. The Controller's Office would like to encumber a portion of the prior year's budget for expenses to be paid in the current year. All encumbrances have purchase orders, bids, or interlocal agreements where the work has begun and will be completed in 2025. Speaking, City Controller Dana Galt.
If you could turn the microphone on.
Yeah, okay. Good evening. And so I tried to call each of you to kind of go over it to see if you have any questions. But yes, we are want to encumber to cover some of the purchases. Some of the work has already been done. We're encumbering for 2025. Bids are already in, and local agreements are already in. So we're just encumbering and bringing that over to 2025.
Thank you so much. Any council members with any questions? It doesn't require a motion. It's just more of a notification. But
Yes.
any council members, comments, questions? Great. Thank you so much. Appreciate the information. And moving into Resolution 1-2025, a request to approve an economic development agreement between the City of Marion and Cafe Valley.
A resolution of the Common Council for Marion, Indiana, approving an economic development agreement. Cafe Valley has advised the city that it desires to further expand its production capacity across its network by investing not less than approximately $20,300,000 completing the project, which includes a substantial investment in new manufacturing equipment, R&D equipment, logistic distribution equipment, and IT equipment, all to be located at its current facility in Marion. As a result of the project, Cafe Valley will hire approximately an additional 100 full-time employees by 2026 at an average salary of not less than approximately $19 per hour. To induce Cafe Valley to complete the project, the city desires to provide Cafe Valley with a 12-year personal property tax abatement, among other rights and obligations of Cafe Valley and the city, all is more particularly defined in that certain economic development agreement. Speaking, Chris Greisel and Joe Murphy.
Good evening,
Welcome.
councilors. For those that don't already know me, Joe Murphy, I was hired by Mayor Morrell part-time to oversee economic development activity for the city back in May of last year, and then I had the fortune of being unanimously approved as the executive director for the redevelopment commission for the city of Marion back in November of last year. So it's in that capacity that I'm speaking before you here today. Just like to provide you with a brief overview both of the project and then of the 3 documents before you today, the economic development agreement, the waiver of compliance, and then the declaratory resolution. And then I've also got Chris Kreisel with me today, as well as a representative from Cafe Valley who's going to provide a brief statement. So on the matter of Cafe Valley, I want to first provide some background for everybody here. Cafe Valley first came to Marion in 2014, 11 years ago, investing tens of millions of dollars to build their facility with an initial goal of hiring 400 people. Fast forward to present day, over 10 years later, and they've invested $40 million in that facility and have created over 700 jobs. Now Cafe Valley has come back to the city to share that they want to invest an additional $20 million to create another 100 jobs and add an additional line of production to their facility here in Marion. I apologize, my phone. Oh, sorry about that. Those jobs will be paying an average wage of $19 an hour, and the $20 million will go towards purchasing new manufacturing equipment to produce that new line that would be producing a new product for the Girl Scouts of America. The city is proposing to authorize a 12-year, 100% personal property tax abatement to help support that project. One thing I want to pause to note is that by approving this abatement, the city is not losing out on any additional tax revenue or new tax revenue. This is where we get into a bit of a history lesson, but at the time Cafe Valley established its new facility in Marion back in 2014, that administration issued a series of taxable economic development revenue bonds for the project. There's 2 separate series here. The Series A bonds, which are payable from the project TIF, and the Series 2 bonds, which are payable from off-site TIF. It's important to remember. The A1 bonds are the responsibility of Cafe Valley, and the A2 bonds are responsibility of the city and the Redevelopment Commission. It is important to note that due to the complex structure of these bonds, in recent years, Project TIF has been short on covering the total payments for the Series 1 bonds, resulting in Cafe Valley making shortfall payments in excess of $200,000 annually over the last several years. Similarly, because the A2 bonds are only payable from off-site TIF, not the project TIF, and to date there's been little to no activity outside of the project, the City Redevelopment Commission has also been making a shortfall on the A2 series bonds, again, somewhere in the range of $200,000 annually. For this reason, even if this new investment were not to be abated and all those new taxes were allowed to flow into that TIF, the TIF would fully capture the existing, those new funds within the existing debt structure, leaving no excess TIF available for any other uses. Now I want to quickly touch on each of the 3 resolutions you have in front of you and the consideration this evening. First, you have an economic development agreement. This document lays out the full structure of the tax abatement, which was read very eloquently by the clerk. It explicitly lays out the obligations of Cafe Valley and the city of Marion as part of this deal. It also details remedies the city has at its disposal if Cafe Valley fails to reach its stated investment or job goals. One additional important note to mention here with this economic development agreement is that we've also included language authorizing the city through the Redevelopment Commission to refinance both the Series A1 and the Series A2 bonds at a time at which it will be beneficial to both parties. If this EDA is approved, we will work closely with our attorneys and our financial advisors to proactively begin that refinancing process and execute that refinancing at a time where, like I said, it'll be beneficial to both parties, resulting in substantial drops in those payments that we're required to make, those shortfall payments we're going to make both on the city side and the Cafe Valley side. So very, very important to understand that. The second document is a resolution regarding the waiver of non-compliance. Due to the pressure of beginning its expanded production to support its new contract with the Girl Scouts of America, Cafe Valley had to install a portion of its new equipment on the site. So if you go out there today, you'll see that some of that equipment has already been purchased and installed. Some of those employees have already started to become part of that workforce there. It's not uncommon for projects like this that takes place. We have to have a situation where Cafe Valley has to meet its contractual commitment to Girl Scouts of America, but the bureaucracy of tax abatement can often drag behind that process. So state law has allowed for us to remedy that situation through this waiver of non-compliance. It's not stating that we're not following the rules of the tax abatement law, just saying that we went about them in a little bit of a different order. And so it allows us to proceed with the abatement and abate the entirety of the investment, even though some of it took place before the actual process of the ERA establishment and the declaratory and confirmatory resolution are passed. Finally, you have the declaratory resolution in front of you. This is establishing that economic revitalization area and actually authorizing the abatement. This is the statutory process that we have to go through for all abatements. It's required that we do these in order to meet the requirements of tax abatement for Indiana. If approved, you will then be required to conduct a public hearing and at your meeting in February approve that confirmatory resolution, which is the final step to approve the abatement process. I now want to welcome up Jacob Everett from Cafe Valley to just speak briefly about Cafe Valley's work here in the city of Marion, this new project, and their excitement to continue their relationship with the city of Marion.
Welcome. It's good to see you.
Good to see you again, sir. Good to see many of you again. Thanks for having me here. First, I want to thank the mayor and his team, all seated here, as well as Chuck with the Growth Council. Everybody's put a lot of time and effort into working on this over many, many months here. And I think we've come to a place that makes a lot of sense to help Cafe Valley continue to grow and partner with the city. So a little bit of background. Joe did a great job explaining kind of where things are. I think Cafe Valley asked me a number of months ago to kind of help them figure out, you know, where they were going to put this investment and if they were going to put it in Indiana, kind of how to navigate this partnership with the city and the state of Indiana. And we've been working on that ever since. And so, like I said, myself and Joe and the team here in Marion has really been trying to figure out how to put something together that makes sense for the city and for Cafe Valley. Obviously, this is a large investment. As Joe said, I think their original commitment was around 400 jobs. They're north of 700 now, and they want to continue to grow that up to at least 800. So significant growth here. And I know Andy and some other folks with Baker Tilly, we see a lot of these bond structures, and Chris as well. This is a unique one. This is very unique and complicated, this bond structure that was put in place back in 2013. And so it took us a lot of time to kind of peel that onion apart and then figure out how to put it all back together in a way that made sense and that the city and the company could work together. So I know it's very kind of odd to see a longer term abatement and 100% abatement, but given the confines of the bond structure and what we're working with, as Joe said, there is zero loss to the city, which it was really, frankly, important to Cafe Valley. Certainly, we were looking to work with you on tax abatement, but the company was not looking to act in a way that was going to really, do something to harm the city. And so, because of the complicated bond structure, this tax abatement structure that we brought to you today actually makes a lot of sense. So I will just note, I think it's been a good, constructive, 6+ months that we've been working on this. I think to nobody's fault, there's new leadership at Cafe Valley. There's been a lot of new leadership within the city. And I think that relationship had kind of grown apart a little bit. And so this project has given us an opportunity to get everybody communicating again. I know the mayor and his team were out at the plant just recently visiting. And so rebuilding that relationship and having a positive, open dialogue between the city and the company, which I'm glad to see is happening again. So I know you've got a bunch of experts here to answer all your questions. I'm happy to help as well, but thanks for the opportunity to be here. And we're happy we've been able to work with the city to put together what's in front of you, which we think is a good opportunity to help Cafe Valley continue to grow here in Marion.
Thank you so much. Anybody else want to speak?
I was just going to say we'll open it up to questions.
Okay.
Delegate the right professional to speak to the
All right.
Yeah.
Any council members' questions? Councilman Cowgill.
Yeah, I have a couple. You can't get us any more information on where you're willing to rewrite the bonds that will be beneficial to the city as well as, I just wish I had some information on what that was because, and it's not I don't trust Cafe Valley, but we had people promise us and say things before, and then after the abatement was done, AKA Metal Source, it wasn't anywhere close. So this is a big project. There's a lot of money here. And I just would like to have some information on what that is, that would help us do that. And then this is 100 new jobs now. Did Cafe Valley lay people off recently or anything?
No, we're not aware of any recent layoffs with Cafe Valley, and I double-checked that with Jacob today, and we're not aware of any layoffs that have taken place. Their employment's at record high for the Marion plant.
Okay.
Yep. Related to the
Yeah.
debt, I guess, is the question related to the old debt, the 2014
Yeah.
debt? So as I mentioned, there's two separate series that
Right,
are.
I understand
Right, so we've got Cafe Valley's portion, which we've had Baker Tilly run numbers on, and Andy, you'd be happy to come up and speak if you have additional information to add to that. But right now, with the current structure in place, Cafe Valley's estimated that over the next 12 years, even with an abatement, Cafe Valley will be paying roughly $3.5 million in shortfall. So they're paying significant monies towards this debt service that was meant to be covered entirely by the project TIF. And that's not taking place in the city's portion. Like I mentioned, it's about $250,000 annually. It fluctuates a little bit here and there. So we're paying somewhere about $3 million for the next 12 years in shortfall. That's why the refinancing procedure, in our opinion, is very, very important. And we wrote that into the economic development agreement to ensure that the city controls that process moving forward, and we have control over both the A1 series and the A2 series so that we can execute that deal at the time that's most helpful to the city. And Andy's hobbled up here, and I think he's probably got a little bit more he'd be happy to share with you.
Hobbled up is a good way to describe it. So, as far as those existing 2013 bonds that are outstanding, those are really outstanding until they're either paid off or mature.
Right.
We've looked at those over the years. The interest rate on those is currently a 5.46% taxable interest rate. We do think as interest rates start to come down, there's the ability to potentially refinance those, and that would decrease the debt payments on the bonds, which would really have two benefits. One, it would decrease the shortfall payments that Cafe Valley's currently making, and then it would also potentially decrease that $200,000 to $230,000 that the city's been obligated on. Taxable interest rates at the end of last year were down to about below 5% for a similar bond issue. So we're very close to the point. I think, as we get into the next, 6 months, we could potentially see rates come down enough where it would justify, the cost of proceeding with the refinancing.
Right.
And we
And that's what I'm a numbers guy when it comes to business, so that's kind of where I'm just trying to get these calculations in my head and put together and see kind of what makes sense and everything. The only other thing that concerns me is the 100% for 12 years. To my knowledge, unless anybody else on the council knows, we've never done 100% for 12 years. I'm not saying we can't, it's just kind of a lot of information all at once, and then to say, okay, now we want you to vote on it right now. I would just like a little time. I mean, I don't know. This is just kind of my input on this right now, but I'll go ahead and let other questions go right now. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I could just address one point there, and I think, again, Andy can probably add a little bit more light to this as well. Because of the complexity of this debt structure, Cafe really is getting hit over the head twice with these payments. And as we increase abatement, what happens is actually their A1 series payments go up because there's less tax revenue inside of that TIF project area to service their existing debt. And so when Andy and his team ran to the original simulation, what we thought the outcome was going to be, it ended up being substantially lower. So while you'll see, and maybe your packet or what's been shared with you previously, the tax savings on paper with this abatement is about $1.3 million over the 12 years. The reality is when you factor in the additional payments that are going to be required to be made by Cafe Valley over those 12 years for those A1 series, it actually nets out to be about a savings of $620,000 for Cafe Valley. So again, it goes back to this really complicated debt structure that was created back in 2013 that's kind of hamstrung all of this process. So the reason we had to up that abatement level beyond what's been traditionally acceptable to this community is to try to overcome some of those existing things that are hamstringing the process.
Right, and I'm all for helping Cafe Valley. I mean, I'm all for anything that helps the city and everything. I just, like I said, I just putting the numbers together, like you guys said.
Yes, sir.
Any other council members? Can you, I wasn't on the council in 2013, 2014. As nicely as you can, what went wrong? Why are we in this position? What could have been done differently to prevent where we're at?
Andy, you want to take a stab at that? Yeah.
Can you turn your mic on, Gary?
You had to combine a couple and refinance them back then on Cafe Valet, so they are taking the brunt of more than one TIF. And we did that on a shortfall of another TIF that did not work out. So that's why we're where we're at on this. So I think everybody needs to know that. That was during previous administrations to where another business failed and we had to refinance another TIF with that TIF, and that's why we're on a shortfall.
I can only, speculate. So we started working with the city again in 2016. We did not work on the original 2013 deal, but we do see that, as we work in communities around the state from time to time, you may have oversized TIF bonds, and what that does really is give, the company benefit with their initial investment, but then it also gives them some upside as they continue to reinvest. And, that could have potentially been the reason that not only did they capture the investment they made back in 2013, 2014, but it also kind of gave them kind of a head start on, this investment that's occurring now or investment that may have happened in previous years. So it is, not super common, but we do see that from time to time on bond issues where they may be oversized. Again, Cafe Valley took the risk. If they didn't continue to reinvest, they're responsible for those payments. But to the extent there is additional investment, it kind of stays within that existing structure.
So for those watching or listening that maybe don't understand what TIFs are and all that, am I correct in thinking that if this were to be approved, well, let's just say as it sits right now, our taxpayers are footing some of the bill. So our taxpayers are essentially subsidizing what's going on down there, correct? I mean, if the city's paying money, that's our taxpayer base. So our citizens are subsidizing some of that payment. But if we were to pass this, that stops that bleeding. Plus, we're now going to start receiving taxes. Am I correct to assume this?
I'll let you take a chance at that one.
I just think our citizens, our taxpayers deserve to know, really, how does this boil down? There's a lot of, I understand TIFs, but if I didn't, I'd be like, I don't know, this sounds like foreign language to me. But I think at the end of the day, it's what's the impact on our tax-paying base?
Correct. And again, with the original deal predating us, my understanding was when it was done in 2013, there was an A1 bond, which is backed by Cafe Valley, and that was used to fund improvements at Cafe Valley's facility. As many of you know, that's the old RCA Thompson site, so there were other improvements kind of being made in the area at the same time. I think there was an AMVETS facility that was relocated, some other public improvements, and so the A2 bonds, while they're part of the Cafe Valley structure, they're not actually repaid from Cafe Valley's TIF. They're repaid from, I think what was hoped at that time would have been other growth within the area, and that growth just never materialized. So, Councilman, you're correct. The city does subsidize those A2 bonds, but those A2 bonds really were for public improvements rather than for Cafe Valley specifically.
So some of the TIF money we're receiving within that area, which is really taxpayer dollars, is going towards those bonds. Am I correct?
Correct.
Yes, that's correct. So the A2 series, as Andy mentioned, is being paid by kind of the off-site TIF is what we're calling it. And right now, there's nothing really being generated in that area of the TIF. And so the city, through the Redevelopment Commission and other instruments, is having to make those shortfall payments. If we look at a scenario with or without abatement, that A2 series doesn't change a lot. Really, it stays pretty much stagnant because whether or not there's new money going into the project or not, that's being captured in a separate area of the TIF that does not get to be payable out of those A2 bonds. So the city's portion of the hook really does not change. The only thing that we gain an advantage of by doing this project, other than supporting a good business and helping them make a new investment and create new jobs, is that we get them in a position where we now control the opportunity to refinance these bonds and lessen those shortfall payments in the future by getting a better rate and getting a better structure.
Because that was the offsite, had nothing to do with.
That's correct. That's correct. So in either scenario, the city right now is making a large shortfall payment annually. And our only way out of that would be to refinance and help lessen that shortfall.
I thought I read somewhere there was, because you got 3 resolutions, I don't know which one it was in, that we that Cafe Valley will make the set contribution or payment, correct? Was it 200,000, or was there a certain dollar amount that they're going to contribute moving forward?
Well, so they'll be responsible for the entirety of the A1 series, which is the case currently as well. So the tax abatement actually will only impact that negatively because there will be less project TIF to support those Series A1 bonds. So they'll actually, their shortfall will increase, but the tax abatement will exceed that by a substantial amount. That was the math that I was giving Councilman Cowgill earlier.
So the abatement they would receive on the $20 million would help offset what they currently are having to expend,
That's correct. So right now, they're paying their full tax bill, and then they're also making additional shortfall payments. What would happen in the future is that they would still be required to make their shortfall payments, but their tax burden would be lessened because of this new investment would be 100% abated. So that's where they receive some benefit. And then hopefully in the future, if we are able to refinance, they will also receive some shortfall relief as well. So it'll be a mutually beneficial refinancing.
And that is when the figure of approximately $600,000 came into play.
Correct.
Over the 3 years, or excuse me, over the 12 years.
Yes.
Savings to Cafe Valley if we give them the 12-year tax abatement.
That's correct, roughly $620,000.
Do we know what type of savings if we refinance the city's portion, what type of savings on a yearly basis we're looking at, and how quick can that happen?
I can take that one. Again, we're at a point where interest rates, I think taxable interest rates are in a low 5%. Your interest rate on the outstanding bonds is 5.46, so there's not a whole lot of difference in that rate yet. Going back 2 or 3 years, rates were at a point where they were in the 3.5% to 4% range, and at that point, that $230,000 payment, we were able to get down by $40,000, $50,000 per year, if I remember correctly. So I think there's a potential to cut that $230,000, down pretty substantially per year. It would just take interest rates continuing to move in the direction they've been moving. So I think if rates come down another 50 basis points, 100 basis points, we may get to the point where it makes sense to proceed again.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's been very informative. Any other council members, questions? Yeah, Councilman Klein.
Yeah, thank you. My gut tells me I like this. I don't have a big problem, but another part of my gut says I don't want to go through all of this, decide all of this in one night. So if I may, I would move that we send this to the Development Committee to hammer out more, answer more questions than doing it all in one night and then come back. That's a motion I'll make. And this is not a knock on anything. Absolute trust and faith and everything. I just want to listen and talk some more, not to be here till 10, but I just want, keep my head spinning to a minimum, I guess.
I would second Mr. Klein's motion.
Okay, so I've got a motion to send Resolution 1-2025 to the Development Committee.
Well, actually, I'm making that for all three of them, all three resolutions, because they're sort of joined at the hip, are they not? Can we pass one without doing the others?
Yeah.
At least from my reading,
yeah.
These are traveling together.
That's correct. Yeah, they're all different components of the same deal.
So my motion would be for all three.
And I would second that also.
So a motion by Councilman Klein to send resolutions 1, 2, and 3-2025 to Development Committee. There was a second by Councilman Kane. Any discussion?
Should there not be a desired outcome from what comes from the committee in part of your motion or not? You're just going to motion and
So what would happen if it would go to committee and the committee would, have a meeting or however many meetings they would like and essentially come back with a recommendation one way or the other, send it back to the council, and then we go off with their recommendations. So, but my question too, since we're in discussion, is Resolution 2 had a public hearing attached. And so from a legal standpoint, do we not need to have the public hearing if it moves to development, or should we still have the public hearing from a legal standpoint? If you could,
So I'll leave that up to you. The public hearing on the waiver of noncompliance was to simply allow the process to move forward, understanding that Cafe Valley has already put some of the equipment into its facility. So by conducting the public hearing tonight and approving that waiver resolution, you're not approving any portion of the agreement if you want to continue to go forward with it. That just allows the process to continue out. I also understand if you want to conduct the public hearing in accordance with the other tabled resolutions all at the same time, we would just probably come back and have all three tabled at the same time after we get through committee. So I'd leave that up to council's discretion.
But could we do the second reading or the public reading tonight, and then would that satisfy it where we wouldn't have to do it like in 2 weeks, and then they could all be passed in 2 weeks instead of waiting another 2 weeks for a public hearing then?
The public hearing can be conducted tonight because it's noticed for having it tonight if you would like to continue forward. I mean, that's, I think, your discretion to do that. And again, it's not committing you to anything. It's just acknowledging that the traditional abatement process had not been followed in accordance with state statute. We acknowledge that, and we're still willing to move forward on it.
And is it a safe presumption that if we do, nothing is endangered because we're doing this, right? If we table it, nothing is endangered other than it just delays?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
The question then, if this were to be in committee and say we were able to have a committee meeting in the next week, if we didn't have the public hearing tonight, then that doesn't give us enough time to post for public hearing at the next meeting, am I correct?
It's a 10-day public hearing notice for the waiver process. What you would essentially be doing is we'd be probably just delaying this out an additional council meeting. So once we bring it back, assuming we bring all three back or two of the three back, after you approve for your consideration the declaratory resolution, we'll have to publish another notice for a public hearing on the confirmatory resolution. So we're just adding potentially an additional council meeting.
Should we check if anyone's here for the public hearing? If they bothered coming out, should we check the audience?
I mean, yeah, we could, but technically we would need to officially open it for public hearing to count it as a public hearing, and we'd have to get to that resolution.
So, yeah, that's exactly right. So, I'll defer, of course, to Marty, but I think your two options are you table all three tonight, or you table item 1 and 3 before you and go ahead and hold the public hearing on item number 2 on the waiver resolution consideration, get that out of the way since we've already opened it up for public hearing, and then know that we'll have the other two coming back.
So if we...
And that would save at least 2 weeks then on the end, correct?
Yes, it could, potentially.
If we had the public hearing tonight, and then we had a committee meeting, say, this week, we could essentially bring it back to the next meeting and we're good.
Yeah, you could. You could bring it, yes. You could bring it back in January, and then we'd be set for having a confirmatory consideration in one of your February council meetings.
Okay.
Marty, are you okay with that?
Mr. President, I know there's a motion and a second on the floor, but an additional question is on the city side of this equation. I haven't really heard of a commitment for refinancing. Is there a commitment on a timely basis, or is that 6 months down the road? Or are we going to sit back and watch interest rates fluctuate, crossing our fingers that they'll go down, or they may not go down, and so we don't refinance? And so there may be zero savings to the city. So what commitment do we have by the city tonight? Is there one?
I think the commitment right now is to watch the interest rates, as you mentioned, because of the situation that we're in. We would love for the interest rates to drop and to be at your next council meeting starting the refinancing process. But until that point in time happens, we can't predict that. We think, as we're watching the markets with the new presidential transition taking place, Andy can speak to this more than I can, but in my experience, you're kind of locked for 30 to 60 days during the transition, and then interest rates start to fluctuate based on other market conditions. So what we would like to be in the position of is being in the driver's seat of having that conversation so that we can come back to you without seeking additional approvals to say that we're now ready to start the refinancing process, or to even complete the refinancing process and to come back to you for final approval to say the interest rates dropped, we have an opportunity to save the city $50,000 to $100,000 a year, let's take advantage of it now. And if we aren't in that position, we're afraid that we might lose that window whenever it may present itself. Thank you.
So the commitment basically is when they go down, you guys are willing to do that at that time?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Well, we have it would make sense. It would save us, I'll say, the taxpayers money. So, okay, so, the motion on the floor was to send all three to committee. We've had some discussion about whether we do the public hearing on Resolution 2. If it's favorable that you would want to do that public hearing, then we would need to amend that motion. And basically send Resolution 1 to committee, move to 2, have the public hearing, do another motion to send it to committee, and then move to 3 to send to committee. Am I correct in that process? I'm looking at the legal team here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Would you be willing to do that, Councilman?
I tell you, let this motion stand. If it gets shot down, we can adjust.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. And if there's is there any other discussion? I will tell you I lean to having the public hearing tonight, because if it was posted, maybe somebody showed up tonight and they're ready to talk. And if we were to move this, that could change. Now, the flip side is if we move the public hearing to another meeting, gives other people maybe a chance to speak. But just because it's been posted, I would lean to having that public hearing tonight. But I'm willing to entertain what council wants. Yeah.
Flip side of that coin is that when it comes back out of committee and then it goes to second reading and public hearing, that person's going to have new information possibly to work with.
Yeah, I agree with that. So the public hearing would be on 2. If I understand this correctly, on Resolution 3, even if we pass Resolution 3, we still have to come back for another public hearing on that.
That's correct.
Correct.
Yeah, the traditional abatement process is a 2-step process. You establish the declaratory resolution, authorize the abatement, then you come back and have a public hearing on the confirmatory resolution.
Yeah, the public hearing for this evening would just be on the non-compliance.
That's correct.
But I think the real meat of this is in Resolution 3, correct?
You got it.
Okay.
For processing the abatement, that's absolutely correct.
Mr. President, question for Mr. Klein and Mr. Kane in your motion and your second. Are we 100% then moving this at least 2 weeks down the road, or is there still a possibility of regaining the momentum?
Well,
that question makes sense.
This would go to a development committee that Vice President Fordyce is the committee chair for that, so he would have to set that meeting, and depending on the timing of that meeting, then it's possible that it could come back to the next council meeting with a decision and opinion from the development committee.
Thank you.
So I would say yes. My hopes would be come back to the next meeting, because I don't want Cafe Valley to think we're not. I want this to succeed, but we also don't want to step in to what happened 10 years ago. And I think our residents deserve our due process. And, we didn't go to legal school. We're probably not as smart as you guys on some of this, so we probably want to digest it, and the public probably wants to digest it a little more and have those conversations. So back to the motion and the second. So if you vote yes on this, basically we're sending it all to committee. We won't have the public hearing tonight. If you vote no, then it's shot down. We come back to resolution 1. You can then make another motion to just send resolution 1 to committee, take a vote, and then move to resolution 2 and have its own separate vote after a public hearing. Hope that makes sense. So, any other discussion before I send it to vote? Madam Clerk, roll call.
Kane?
Aye.
Marshall?
Aye.
Fordice?
Aye.
Brunner?
Aye.
Klein?
Yes.
Devine?
Yes.
Witten?
Yes.
Cowgill?
Aye.
McKinley?
No. I just wanted to have the public hearing tonight, that's all. So there'll be no public hearing. All 3 of these will go to the Development Committee. So Vice President Fordyce, if you could take that on and schedule that would be much appreciated.
I will. I'll schedule that just as soon as possible. I think I just need 48 hours to give notice. Is that correct, Deb? And then I can set a meeting to your convenience just as soon as that.
That'd be great.
And I'd be more than willing to do that ASAP.
We'll look forward to it.
Thank you, sir. We'll notify you.
Great, thank you so much.
Appreciate it very much.
Mr. Fordyce, since they were here, are you going to allow them to appear by Zoom or telephone at the committee level, or do you want them in person?
I'd prefer in person.
Very good.
If that's not an issue.
Well, it's never an issue. There's always just an expense to it. I think about the legal bills, but it's our right to have in person, so yeah. Yes, go ahead.
Am I able to make a comment before
Sure.
you conclude this matter?
Yeah, go ahead. Can you turn your mic on?
I'm trying. I'm going to ask Andy to confirm a couple things if he's willing and able. So just food for thought as you take this to committee, which I don't disagree with. This is a complicated matter. It's just, there's a lot there. And so we would have loved to see this proceed, but I totally understand why you guys chose what you chose. So we talk about the 620,000, that's like the net savings for Cafe Valley. It's important to understand, and it's very counterintuitive, but the choice is not Cafe Valley saves that money or the city gets the money. That is not the case. If you guys do not approve this, it doesn't go into the overall tax rolls. That's just not the way it works. So that's just food for thought. It's very counterintuitive because in a normal abatement, that's really kind of the choice you're making is, are we going to collect this tax or are we not going to collect this tax? Because of this bond structure, it's totally different. The other observation, do you concur?
I do.
He's your expert, not me. The other thing I was just going to throw out there, so again, this is really, there's kind of 3 different reasons this is happening, but if you were to take this project and take it outside of Cafe Valley, right, and say somebody knocked on your door tomorrow and said, we're going to invest $20 million, will you just give us a quote unquote normal abatement, whatever that means, right? 10 years, you start at 100 and you kind of ratchet it down. If you did that for Joe Schmo company that knocks on your door, that's going to save them around $1 million. So even with that's a ratcheting down 100, 90, 80, right? That's going to save them about $1 million. In this scenario, we're saying we're not going to ratchet it down. We're going to keep it 100%, and we're going to do it for 12 years, not 10 years, and it's still only going to save them $600,000. So this is still, just because we're trapped within this bond structure, this is still actually a smaller savings amount to the company than it kind of quote unquote normally would be if someone knocked on your door to make an investment. So I'm not trying to talk you into anything really. I do think it's good for you guys to understand this as much as you can, because I've stared at these numbers a lot, and I know you have too, and it's very complicated, but those 2 points I think are very relevant to the way you guys think about it.
We really appreciate that, I think definitely the council as a whole is looking forward to kind of digesting, after you leave, and can reread everything and then have follow-up conversations. I would anticipate maybe this go favorably, but obviously it's up to the rest of the council, and we'll get all our questions answered, hopefully in our committee meeting. So I appreciate the council wanting to have that due diligence. So, go ahead.
And I agree with you, but I think this is kind of what I want you to kind of understand from our point of view. I understand from your point of view. But from our point of view, we've had other things that went bad and everything. And like you just said, you guys have stared at these numbers for quite some time and had to digest it, where we got it 10 minutes ago. So we want to do the same thing. We have a good working relationship with Cafe Valley, but we was elected to do what's best for the city. So I think we all just want to make the right choice for everyone. Cafe Valley, the city, everybody. Okay, I know you don't, I know. And I do understand what you're saying. Okay.
All right. Okay, well, that takes us to the end of new business, and I do not have any announcements. Do any other council members have any announcements they'd like to make? Fantastic. I would take a motion to adjourn. Motion by Councilwoman Devine to adjourn, a second by Councilman Klein. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, roll call.
Kane?
Aye.
Marshall?
Aye.
Fordyce?
Aye.
Brunner?
Aye.
Klein? Devine?
Yes.
Witten?
Yes.
Cowgill?
Aye.
McKinley?
Yes. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.